Hello fans, hello baseball fans out there. This is Wager Detective reporting live from Atlantic City, May 22nd, 2026. And we got a great game to cap here. Two teams are on surging surges right now that are looking really good. We are Cleveland Guardians versus the Philadelphia Phillies. Before we get into that, be sure to follow Wager Detective on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Set alerts on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and Wager Detective loves all his fans. So let's get into this game right here as we break it down. Guardians versus Phillies. The Guardians are coming in as a plus 150 underdog to the Phillies minus 178. So plus 150, just from memory, that's a 40% win probability. I totally disagree with it. Maybe that'll give you a hint as to who I'm leaning towards, especially with the matchups. I think this line is predicated upon Sanchez being on the mound and pitching really good with scoreless inning after scoreless inning, but I think we got to pump the brakes on that when we look at who he's played against and who he's pitched against to get those numbers. But let's start off with the Guardians here. Let's get into this cap. The Guardians, 30-22 on the year. They're 9-1 in their last 10 games. They're 15-12 in road games this year. They're 12-4 versus left-handed pitching, which they'll be seeing today in Christopher Sanchez. The Guardians are 8-7 in interleague games and 6-7 in one-run games. So not a bad year, right? 9-1 in their last 10, playing great. 30-22 on the year. 12-4 versus left-handed pitching, looking pretty bright so far for the Guardians. Now the Guardians, as road dogs this year, they are 9-7. They're 3-3 this year on one day off. And they are 28-21 when they're playing a team on equal rest, and that's what they'll be playing the Phillies on. Both teams had the day off yesterday. The difference is the Guardians were traveling from city to city with the day off, and then the Phillies were just at home. I like the team that's on the move. That's another part of this cap as I go. You're going to understand situational premises of what's going on. First and foremost, the line looks way off. Make no mistake about it, I'm probably most likely, by the end of this cap, going to stick with who I think, and plus 150 for what you're going to hear is pretty good for the Guardians to be getting. So 9-7 is road dogs, very good. Now, the Guardians are 5-4 last 9 head-to-head with the Phillies, 5 over, 4 under, and, they're not really scoring. They've scored 7-11, 14-19, 7-11, 14-19, 26 runs in the last 9 games. That's coming out to about a 2.88 runs per game average. And then the Phillies are scoring 10, 13, 21, 22, 35 over the last 9 against the Guardians, coming out to a 3.88 runs per game average. So Guardians 5-4 last night against Philly, and they're only scoring 2.88 runs per game over that stretch. It makes you think there's going to be a low-scoring game, and the game is set at 6.5. I don't necessarily agree with that. Anytime I see a 6.5, I automatically want to go over because I just don't think that with two lineups like this, I don't necessarily think that one inning can't make this game go over. So the Guardians, again, 5-4 the last 9 versus the Phillies. Now, the Guardians this year in road night games, 12-7. Very, very good for them. 12 over and 7 under in those games. In the 19 road night games for the Guardians this year, they're scoring 4.36 runs per game to their opponent's 4.42. It's coming out well over that 6.5. It's coming out to about 8.98 in the Guardians road night games this year on average. Now, if we look at what the Guardians done in their last 9 games, they're 8-1, 5 over, 4 under, and they're scoring 5.33 runs per game to their opponent's 2.88 over their last 9 games. So that's a run differential of 48 runs to 26 in favor of the Guardians over their last 9 games this year. The total score coming out to a 8.21 runs per game average in the Guardians' last 9. Now, the Guardians are 8-7 versus the American League this year. Against the National League, Guardians 8-7 versus the National League, 9 over, 6 under. In those 15 games versus the National League this year, the Guardians are scoring 4.73 runs per game to 4.4 for their opponent. That comes out to 9.13 runs per game average. In the Guardians' 15 games versus the National League this year, they've scored 5+ runs 8 times and have held opponents to 3 runs or less 7 times. So, Guardians versus the National League. 15 games, they've scored 5+ runs 8 times, held their opponents to 3 or less runs 7 times. Okay, something to think about. Now, the situational split, every wager detective report has one, and this is no different. The situational split here is going to be the Guardians going from city to city with a day off in between. Okay, and they just got done beating. We'll get into this, but in that situational split, city to city series with a day off in between, they are 4-3 in their last 7, 6 over, 1 under, and in this split, they're scoring 5.57 runs per game to their opponents 4.42. That comes out to 9+ runs per game average in those games. So, looking pretty good for the Guardians. We're going to get into the pitching. Gavin Williams is going to be on the mound, and the Guardians are 3-2 in the last 5 starts that Gavin Williams starts. 31.2 innings pitched, 38 hits, 18 earned runs, 5 walks, 33 strikeouts, and 5 home runs. That comes out to a 5.12 ERA, a 1.36 WHIP. He's given up 1.42 home runs per 9, and he's striking out 9.39 batters per 9 in his last 5 outings. And the Guardians, they're 3-2 in their last 5 when Williams starts, and they're 6-3 this year when he starts in all his starts this year. So pretty good for the Guardians in that regard. Another stat in the column for the Guardians there. So 3-2 in their last 5 starts for Gavin Williams, and 6-3 on the year. And on the year, Gavin Williams, a 3.67 ERA with a 1.19 WHIP. So over his 9 games this year, the ERA is 3.67. Recently, it is over the last 5, it's 5.12. So the WHIP and the ERA are down over the year-long numbers, but over the last 5, teams have been hitting him a little bit more. He's getting his Ks. He's got 33 Ks and 31.2 innings pitched on his last 5 outings. So he's missing bats quite a bit. 9.39 Ks per 9. So that's that part of the cap. The highlights of the cap for the Guardians: 12-7 in road night games this year, where they've scored 5+ runs 9 times. They're better than 500 against the National League this year, scoring 4.73 runs. They're 5-4 in their last 9 versus the Phillies. They're 9-7 as road dogs this year. Okay, now let's get into the Phillies side of the cap. The Phillies this year, they're 25-25 on the year, 4-3 in extra inning games if the game should go to overtime, extra innings. They're 10-4 in one-run games. So they're considerably better than the Guardians, who are 6-7 in one-run games. The Phillies 10-4. Okay, but the Phillies are 5-4, little middling versus the American League. The Phillies are 13-12 as home favorites this year. They're 4-3 in 1 day off. When they have 1 day off, they're 9-15 after a loss, and that's what they'll be heading into this game, because they've lost 2 to the Cincinnati Reds. So something to think about there when you're putting up a -178, which I believe it to be based just around the pitcher in Sanchez, and we'll get into that. Now, the Phillies lost, again, 2 straight versus the Reds. The Phillies this year, 8-10 in home night games, 14 over, 4 under. That's 6.5. In 18 home night games for the Phillies, they're scoring 4.55 runs per game to 5.83 for their opponents. They're being outscored run differential-wise 82-105 in their 18 home night games this year, and the total score is averaging 10.38 runs per game. The Phillies, 6-3 over their last 9, playing pretty good. 3 over, 6 under. The Phillies are scoring 4.33 runs per game to 3.44 for their opponents. Comes out to 7.77 jackpot for the total score there in the Phillies' last 9. Situational day off, home-to-home series. The Phillies are 2-3 in their last 5 in that situation. Scoring 5.2 runs a game to 5.4. That comes out to 10.6 runs per game average. So if we look at the Phillies before we get into the pitching, 13 and 14 at home, 10 and 4 one-run games. That's good. 8 and 10 in home night games, middling. 6 and 3 in their last 9. But I'd caution that to say that they did play Colorado and Pittsburgh in there, and these teams just aren't Cleveland. When we get to it, it's just really not what it is. Situationally, in the split of a home day off series, home series to home series, 2 and 3 in their last 5 games, averaging 10.6 runs per game. Now, when we get into Christopher Sanchez, the Phillies are 7 and 3 when Sanchez starts this year. The Phillies' opponents in Sanchez starts this year over all the games in those 10 games, averaging 3.5 runs per game when Sanchez starts. Okay, now Sanchez last 5. The Phillies are 4 and 1. The wins came against Pittsburgh 6-0, Colorado 6-0, back-to-back complete game shutouts. He beat the Athletics 9-1 and beat San Francisco 3-2, and then the one loss was at Chicago where he lost 7-8. So I'm not really jumping out the window when you got a team that has the 3rd best not striking out rate in all of baseball, and that's the Cleveland Guardians. A team that knows how to play on the road. Gavin Williams, a serviceable guy. I mean, if you could get some runs off Sanchez, or you can make him work counts and hit the contact, which this Guardians team is kind of doing. I mean, like we said, they're 30 and 22 on the year, right? They got 5 more wins than the Phillies. They're playing in the American League. They're 9 and 7 as road dogs, 3 and 3 in one day off. Phillies are 4 and 3 in one day off. Phillies, again, remember, part of the cap. They're 9 and 15 after a loss, and they just lost against and then they're 2 and 3 in games where they have a day off in between home series, from series to series. So a lot of things to think about there, and Williams, you could say what you want, but when he pitches on his day's rest, 4 days rest, I forgot to mention that he is the Guardians are 3 and 1 this year. Sorry to go back to the part of the Guardians cap, but I'm just missing this now. The Guardians are 3 and 1 when Williams starts on 4 days rest. And in those 4 days rest, 27.2 innings pitched, 20 hits, 6 earned runs, 1 home run, and 5 walks. That's a 1.95 ERA, 0.90 whip, and 11.7 Ks per 9 for Gavin Williams this year when he pitches on 4 days rest. So, and the Guardians are 3 and 1. Forgot to add that in. That's a big, major move towards what we said about Gavin Williams. This year, last 5 and the numbers he's putting up. But he does get better again, like we said, in over the year-long average, and the Guardians are 6 and 3 when Williams starts. But we're back to the Phillies part of the cap again. I just wanted to add in that Williams split because that is very, very important, something to keep in mind when we're capping this game. So the Phillies 7 and 3 this year when Sanchez starts. Teams are scoring 3.5 runs per game. The Phillies are 4 and 1 in Sanchez last 5 starts, beating Pittsburgh and Colorado, shutting out both those teams in back-to-back outings, 6-0, 6-0. Beat the Athletics 9-1. You beat San Francisco 3-2, and you lost against the Cubs 7-8. So, if you look at those records over his last 5, it comes out of those teams 91 and 110. They have a 91 wins and 110 losses, right? That's many games under 500. What's that? 19 games under 500 that you're winning games against. Now you're going against a Cleveland team that's won 8 out of their last 9. They're 30 and 22 on the year, and they're 12 and 7 in road night games. And not bad. They could still score against the National League, where they're 8 and 7 and scoring 4.73 runs per game. I think the main factor around this game is just going to come around to can the Guardians hit left-handed pitching? And we said in the beginning of the cap, they are 12 and 4 this year versus left-handed pitching. So that does not seem to be the problem for them. So let's get back into this cap here with Sanchez. So Sanchez, again, man, he's pitching great. Last 5 starts, 36 innings pitched, 31 strikeouts, 8 earned runs, 6 bases on ball, 41 strikeouts in his last 36 innings pitched. He's only given up 2 home runs, and that was in 1 game versus the Cubs in his last 5. In his last 5 games, Sanchez has a 2 ERA, a 1.02 whip, 10.25 Ks per nine, and he's given up 0.5 home runs per nine over his last 5. Again, I caution all those numbers as to who he's playing against, and that's how I feel on that. Now, the Phillies are 3-1 when Sanchez starts on 5 days rest. 3-1 record for the Phillies on Sanchez 5 days rest this year. 2 over, 2 under. The Phillies are scoring 6.25 runs per game to 4.5 for their opponent. That comes out to 10.75 runs per game average. And in Sanchez's 4 games on 5 days rest this year, he has a 1.77 ERA, a 1.34 whip. He's striking out 12.1 batters per 9 innings, right? But he did have 13 Ks in his last outing versus the Pirates. So I believe in progression to the regression. I believe that this line is worth the value on the Guardians. The Guardians are playing great baseball. We've seen the Phillies earlier this year where they just had an incredibly long losing streak. I think the Guardians want to show that they have what it takes to beat top-tier pitchers, and there would be nothing better or more focused for them. When you have a day off to be able to study your pitcher, I believe that this Guardians team and this franchise is just built on kind of that premise like the Atlanta Braves and teams that just consistently win. They probably used that day off yesterday to study this guy, watching footage, watching tape. Gavin Williams, he's a flamethrower too. He's going to be seeing some right-handed bats in there. There's going to be a bunch of left-handed bats, though. You got Harper, you got Schwarber. Are they still kind of limping in with injuries? You know, I'm not a big fan of Garcia in the 4 spot. Marsh is hitting well. Romuto. Listen, man, the guy DeLauder, the right fielder DeLauder, keep an eye on him, man. He's an absolute stud. The guy just runs all types of metrics at you all day long, from hits, getting on base. He's the stud there. You got Ramirez. I haven't seen Kwan's in there. Kwan's going to be back in the lineup. I mean, if I'm looking at all this, I can kind of agree with the under, but I believe if the game goes over, it's going to be because the Guardians are going to be the ones that score a little bit more here. I don't know if it will go over, but Wager Detective is going to call the Cleveland Guardians plus 150. I think Gavin Williams gives them enough. And then I think if we get to the bullpen and it's close and it's sticky, I know the Phillies, like we said, they're 10-4 in one-run games, and the Guardians are 6-7. But I got a feeling that, you know, there could be the Guardians could get away here a little bit. But if not, I think they could still win a low-scoring game. Wager Detective is going to call the Guardians plus 150 on the money line. And that's my report. That's my only play for this game. No total on this one. But I do believe that Sanchez coming off the road, his last 2 starts were on the road, pitched fantastic. Now he's got to come back home. He's got to perform to that standard that he just held up. You've got a team coming in that, like we said, they're 3-3 on 1 day off, but they're 9-7 as road dogs like the Guardians are tonight. And they're 28-21 when they're playing a team on equal rest. So something to think about. And the Phillies, again, they're 9-15 this year after a loss, and they're 13-14 at home. So give me the Guardians. This is Wager Detective. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, and just know I really do appreciate and love all my fans out there now and the future ones that are on the way. I'm just so excited for what Wager Detective has in store for everyone that likes these type of breakdowns. I'm going to get better as I go, and I love you. Reporting live from Atlantic City, this is Wager Detective, and I'll talk to you soon. May 22nd, 2026.